Welcome to today's episode of the Live Healthy Now podcast. And I'm joined today by a brilliant guest who I know is going to get you thinking about mental health in probably quite a different way, because I'm joined today by Matthew Williams, who's here to share a bit of his experience and personal story with depression and the unique way, shall I say, that he helps other people now manage their depression and mental health, because he's a huge local men's mental health advocate here in the Northeast, someone I've met a few times out at different networking events and heard Matthew speak. So I'm really excited to explore this topic with you today, Matthew.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me, Nicola.
You're very welcome. So, yeah, I've heard you, as I said, talk a couple of times about your own journey and experience. But I want to just kick off our conversation by asking you what your own, most impactful healthy habit is.
That's a good question to start with. I think I'm probably going to start by, I think a lot of people maybe that work in this field, or maybe I'm just saying that to feel better, but there's things that I should do more of that I know.
Yeah, we all should.
Something I found over the years very, very helpful is meditation. I found that was really helped in terms of being present and finding a place of calm, being less reactive to so you're more able to choose a response to situations. So I find that to be very powerful. Again, with life being how it is, it's for me, it's you need to build these things as habits, and sometimes we get out of the habit of things, but that's a big thing for me, and others are kind of simple day-to-day things. Reading and music are things that I always am sure to make time for. Things that I get a lot out of losing myself in a book or in a good album.
And that's exactly it, isn't it? Those things, they're actually quite mindful activities to do, aren't
Yeah,
they? Because as you said with meditation, it's about being present, grounding yourself, taking an opportunity to pause. But a lot of people, me included, struggle with like real meditation, if you like. So having other alternatives that are still ways to just pause, have your mind totally focused on what you're doing. Music is a brilliant one, isn't it? People who play music as well, guitar. Do you
yeah,
play, or yeah, you do? I thought I might have seen. So like playing as well can be really beneficial just to bring you more into that present moment. So
yeah.
that's
I'd say
great.
that's something. I did play piano, but again, it's something that I haven't really done for a few years now. It's just life's changed in a lot of ways over the last few years, and particularly in terms of running your own business. I mean, that and being a single parent, it kind of takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you started with in saying was about how we all want to do more. And I always use the example of Beyonce, how she's got an army of staff to do so many different things for her. But I bet she's got things in her life that she still wants to achieve or do differently, or improve. We're all work in progress. There's no finish line, is there? And I think that's really important in what we do to share, because I think people can look upon people like us who do have an awareness of their health and well-being and invest in it and think, yeah, I'll never be like them though. And I
Yeah.
always say it's not a one size fits all approach,
Oh,
and it's not
absolutely.
all or nothing, is it? So it's great that we can be open as well and say, yeah, we've got busy lives, but it's about those things that will make the biggest
Yeah.
difference to you,
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously for the journey you've been on, you've had to really explore things like those habits to help you get to the place that you are now. And I know you've had far from a linear journey. And I always say as well that health
Yeah.
isn't linear. It's not about, once you've started, that's it. You're going to be healthy and you reach a finish point. So just to start off the conversation on depression, explain a little bit about it, because I do think it can be something that people get a bit confused about or even scared about, because it's such a big word, isn't it, and a big thing to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so in terms of my experiences with it, I've had three. I've had three severe episodes of depression. which have all been in my adult life. First was 2006, second was 2013, and the third was 2019. And each of them lasted a number of months. And it's, yeah, I mean, I'd never, well, the first time it happened particularly, I had no idea what was happening to me. No idea. And it's, one of the things that struck me was how physical it is as well, how the physical impact it has. I'm someone that, optimistic, I like to enjoy life, pretty confident, all of those things. And so I think sometimes there can be a stereotype of, who could become depressed, having a pessimistic nature, or not having great self-esteem, things like that. But I never felt that was me, really. So it was very, very, I just, would never have thought it was something that could impact me. But obviously now I know a lot more about it. And I think the significant thing, I guess, was a very obvious sense that I was ill, I was unwell. It's not just, again, people often have this simplistic thing, if you could just think differently, if you just think that, almost like there's one key that you need to find to unlock it, and it just wasn't like that at all. It's like being in the grip of something that's so much more powerful than you are, and it consumes everything. And like I said, and that's in a very physical way as well. And so, yeah, I knew I was ill, I was unwell, that it was something that was beyond my ability to deal with on my own.
Yeah, and that's the big difference, isn't it, between, just being maybe in a low mood, feeling unhappy with things in your life, and then depression.
Yeah.
And I think the awareness that's grown over the past 10 years or so with mental health is incredible, and it's very much needed. But at the same time, I think it's led to a lot of people using the term without really knowing what it means. Like they say, "Oh, I'm really depressed." But
Yeah.
like you explained, depression is an illness. It's something that is very different to just feeling it, which I'm not saying it's not difficult to have low mood and be unhappy and things like that, but depression's more about it being prolonged, isn't it? And as you say, a bit struggling to do normal things in your life.
Oh, absolutely. And so the word I use in my from my experience is it consumed me, completely consumed me. And I've been through, like all of us, like you say, we go through ups and downs in life, and you have good moods and not so good moods, and but it's natural. When we're kind of naturally responding to life and events around us, that's one thing. But like you say, when you're in the grip of something that takes over everything, to the extent you can't think in a positive way, you can't function in anything like the ability to talk and articulate myself is pretty much gone. I mean, it's just, I couldn't smile, laugh, again, gone for months and months and months. And yeah, it's crippling, and it's an illness. And I never used the word, and we all navigate our own way through it and have our own beliefs about it, but I never used the word depressed, because I do think it sounds, I don't know, the way it is used in a way that I'm feeling a bit down or a bit low, which again, isn't pleasant for anyone. But I don't know, it's an illness, and I think saying depression, it captures a bit more of that than, I don't know, sometimes the thing about feeling depressed, it almost makes it sound like a kind of passing thing that you can feel it one day, not the next. Again, in my experience, that's certainly not how it was.
And I think with the way it can be used like that as well, then it doesn't help when someone is really depressed for them to get that support probably that they need, because of how, I'm not saying it's flippant, but how misunderstood it is. And as you say, people can just use it when they are feeling a bit low. So therefore, when someone is truly suffering and struggling with depression, it may not be really fully understood. And
Yeah,
is that something that you experience, with people not really getting in? And I know you, because I follow your social media, and as I say, I heard you talk, you touch
yeah,
on the fact that a lot of people make comments like, oh, come on, just think positive, or, you come on, pull yourself together. You've got great things in your life. You've got your
yeah,
kids, or you've got a house. Be great, that kind of be grateful because you've got stuff, and they're doing it from a good place in
yeah.
their
No, yeah,
heart.
absolutely.
But yeah, did you feel as though it was hard to get the help you needed?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, um, I mean, with those kind of comments, and like you say, is usually well-meaning, but I knew all of that, and this is it. I knew all of that. I was grateful for everything I had. That I did, and that in terms of how we should feel, yeah, I should have been happy, but I wasn't, and it wasn't even that. It's not that I'm not happy. I was ill, I had depression, and so yeah, it is difficult where because it's that thing that no one gets it, no one understands if, and particularly the first time getting help was really tough. So I didn't know anything about it, and there wasn't. It was 2006. There wasn't the amount of help that is available now. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but it was hard then, and yeah, and it's just that thing of admitting that you need help mentally was a very scary thing. I thought that, and I remember going to the doctors, and you think that, right, this is on my record permanently, and I decided, every time I applied for a job, someone would pull up my medical records, and just all this stuff that nonsense. But that was so just going to the doctors. It was like I was exposing myself to something that was going to ruin my life. Fact is, it already was, and it became, the longer it went, the more apparent it became that I wasn't just gonna, I wasn't just gonna suddenly wake up and be all right. I was, yeah, I was not well at all,
Mm.
and
And
it's hard for people around you because they don't know what's happening either, and I'm not someone that can. I'm not someone that can kind of easily mask. Well, I can't anyway at all mask how I feel. I'm pretty transparent, so it obviously impacts on the people around you as well, and then you feel bad about that, and yeah, it's horrible, horrible, horrible place to be.
so because you've been through it on those three times, and obviously now you helping many other people who are in similar places to where you've been, like, did you find that it became easier to speak out and ask for help because of what you learned the first time? Was the improvements even in yourself rather than in society at a wider scale?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I have no qualms whatsoever about seeing a counselor, a psychologist. I mean, I still take antidepressant tablets. I'll do whatever it takes. I mean, to me, that the being well is all that matters. Whatever that takes, then yeah, I'll do it. It doesn't, feeling like me and being able to do the things I love to do and to enjoy my life and contribute and all these things. I mean, that's what matters. So yeah, I have no qualms of, if I need help, I'll yeah, I'll get. I mean, I say, I mean, it's never easy in the sense that we don't like to. We like to think we can just crack on and deal with everything on our own. That's more a man thing, or I don't know, but certainly I have that in me. But I also know, where it can go, where you can end up, basically, and that's, yeah, it's just not. Never want to go back there again. So yeah, I'll do what I need to do to, yeah, to not end up there again.
But so many men struggle with speaking out, don't they? I know there's lots of stats about
Yeah,
men and how infrequently they actually have a conversation about
yeah.
the way they feel with someone else. And I can't remember if you shared this actually, Matthew. it was an example of, I think, a room full of women, and I can't remember who it was, someone holding a meeting or talk, and it asked the women in the room, how would they feel if they didn't chat to another person in a week about how they felt. Then it was, a month, and then it was a year, and then it was compared to, actually, this is the case for many men. Many men don't speak to another male about the way they feel, like, more than once a year. If that. It was so small, the stat, and it was really alarming, because we are very different, men and women. We genetically are the way we've evolved biologically. Absolutely. And so for a lot of men, it's just never been normal to speak out. So, learned behaviour is what it is. That becomes your story and how you are, doesn't it? So, yeah. And you're seeing that this is starting to change. I know obviously there's a lot more awareness, but there's still a lot more to do. How are men feeling about talking up, speaking up?
See, personally, I mean, I've always had the same best friend since I was 3 years old. I've always had someone that I can talk to about anything. So I've always had that, and I mean, as we're adults, things change, and he lives away, but he's still my best friend, and he's always been there for me when I've struggled. And I've also always had close female friends who I've been able to talk to about anything. So I've always had that ability to talk, and so I know how much that helps. And but there's still that thing in terms of when it came to actually getting help. It was almost like the public side of it. Taking time off work, going to the doctor. It's almost like you felt you'd be kind of formally labelled in that way. And, your friends know you, so you tell them, and, still your friends, still there for you and whatever. Whereas it was that sense of, like I said, I almost having this label attached to me, that and what the implications of that bit would be, that was a real fear. So, in terms of work, how would it affect my career, for instance? And would people believe in me to do particular things at work? And I think the other thing about talking, I was reading something this week, I think it was from the Priory, about, and it certainly squares with my experience and of, in terms of personal experience and through my work, that men generally, if men seek help at all, it'll be as they're approaching a kind of crisis point. And that, again, it definitely needs normalising that. I always say this, nobody wants to carry a burden alone. Nobody. And I know, doing the work I do, that by talking you give other people permission to, because they know that you're not going to judge them for it, because you've been there and you get it. And so that is the key thing to me. I'm in a culture where people can feel that they're not going to be judged, they're not going their life's not going to suffer through speaking out. But even then, the onus is too much on, you have to speak out, you have to speak to somebody. It's very difficult to do that when you're struggling. And actually, that's only, it's not that I'm sometimes aware that I don't like the sense sometimes that that you'll talk to someone and suddenly everything will lift. And people say that you feel a weight lift, and you do, but it doesn't change anything on its own. It's what comes next. Does that person listen, support? Is there other support available, the right kind of help? So talking is a big part of it, because there's nothing without it, but there has to be listening, understanding, compassion, and the right kinds of support, which is different for every individual, which further we're all different. So it is important to talk, but we've still got, I believe, a long way to go in terms of that wider understanding, people's comfort in talking about things. So if someone speaks to them who's struggling, how they respond to that, and in terms of resource and the kind of support that's out there, I think we've got a lot still to do.
And you touched on culture, and that's exactly it, isn't it? It's got to be culturally normal, and it's how we get that. And as you say, a lot of the kind of the way we've been trying to do that is through the person themselves who has the issue and needs help, which I know, because I've been through depression as well, when you are feeling like that, you don't want to share that. And
Oh yeah,
I certainly worked in a company where it felt quite open door and that there was acceptance around mental health. Yet for 20 years, I hid my anxiety, panic disorder, and at times when I was depressed because of the fear of stigma being attached to me. Like you say, speaking up and saying, this is what's wrong with me, then that becoming judgment on you and your ability,
yeah,
your capability, and your value for the business and so on. And I found it hard to open up even to
yeah,
family members, because you feel as well that there's so much you go through, isn't there? It's not necessarily shame, but in that you just don't even know what to say because you don't even know what's wrong because you're
yeah,
so confused
yeah,
about the way you feel. And I think, everything that we do and people in our sector, and a lot of obviously awareness that's coming from celebrities, athletes, in sports. I know that from obviously my Nike days, how important that is to help normalise it and build this culture where it's not about the person that has a problem having to speak up to make
yeah,
it okay, but about just society in general having that awareness and acceptance. So
yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. There's a long way to go, but certainly making it normal to be able to speak out is a big, huge part of doing that. So I know you do a lot of work on that. You do a lot of work specifically with men. As I said at the start, you're a mental health advocate for men, and you do a lot of work with kids as well, which I love, because my big vision is all about normalising healthy habits
Yeah.
so kids can grow up, know why they should take care of themselves to feel
Yeah.
happy and healthy. So yeah, share a little bit about the boxing side then, and how you bring all of this together, the work you do in the community and with kids and men particularly.
Yeah, so my background is in terms of my work, my professional background has been in sport and sports development, and that came from my own personal. I was an athlete when I was a kid. Boxing was always my favourite sport, but I was never a scrapper or anything, so I never got involved when I was a kid. Um, but it was always, I watched Rocky 2 one Christmas. I was around 10, and I've loved boxing ever since. And yeah, I watched it for years, or read about it, tons of books about it, all this. And so, and the thing with boxing, it's such a good metaphor for life, for struggle. And this way, let's say I mentioned Rocky. I mean, it's it. You don't have to be a boxing fan to love Rocky. It's a human story, and that's it. Boxing, it's that human. It's about struggle, about overcoming challenges, and so it's a metaphor that lends itself very well to depression. And so some of the things I talk about is that this thing about accepting help, needing help. The biggest, strongest people in the world, can get knocked down, and you see you get helped by the cornerman, getting helped up, and there are just so many examples, and I like the idea of externalizing depression as an opponent, as opposed to, it's not a fundamental, it's not part of you, who you are. It's not a fundamental part of your identity. It's not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's something you're experiencing, a battle you're going through. And so I like to kind of externalize that, because again, I think part of how mental health has been talked about, I think, so, and I get asked a question, how do I live with depression? I said, well, I don't. I've had it 3 times. I don't live with it. I do my best to look after my mental health. Same as, if I'd had a physical illness, you try and be healthy anyway. It's not just because I might get flu again. It's and so yeah, that kind of, it's a particular battle you're going through at a particular period of time. I think it helps in the sense that it's not a part of your identity, but also that it's not something that you're necessarily you're not stuck with for life. Because I think that's another thing that sometimes we can almost have been led to believe, really, that it's something that it's always lurking there waiting. And I don't find that to be a helpful thought process, whilst at the same time there is that, again, balance that we do need to look after our health, because there can be consequences if we don't. But so there's lots of analogies around boxing that I use to help people understand. I mean, another is in terms of how powerful depression's grip is. And there's a particular clip I show from a fight of a fighter that's been knocked down and is trying to get up and can't. And the commentator says he should be able to get up from this, but he's falling over. He wants to fight. He wants to get up. That's what he's trained to do. That's what his almost his identity as a fighter. He's telling him, but he can't because his head's being scrambled by a punch. And it's that, when you have depression, you're under the influence of something. You're in the grip of something. Of course you don't want to be in bed. Of course you don't want to be not showering and not eating. Of course you don't. No one wants that. But you're in the grip of something so powerful. And so I try and use those examples to help people to see it a bit differently, and also again to see that as a temporary state. And something I would say, in terms of boxing, one of the things about one of the first things about boxing, you're overcoming your natural instinct to fight, flight, freeze. So it's built on having to overcome those things. So again, it provides a good starting point for the fact that you have a brain and nerve system that's big, powerful, and designed to keep you safe. But it doesn't always work in a way that is conducive to you living your life, and so. But we can train it in the same way a boxer doesn't flinch when there's a punch coming at him, because he knows, or she knows, that they're prepared for it. They know what to expect. They know their own strengths and what they can counter each shot with. So again, there's a lot of analogies that we can use that can help people to think about it in a different way.
Sounds brilliant. I love all of the analogies. And I guess the activity part of it is very powerful as well, because we know how exercise can affect our brain, our chemical and hormonal balance. So do you see that people get so much from it? It's kind of like a win-win, the learning about depression and mental health through boxing itself, but then the activity is great exercise for them to get involved with. Yeah
absolutely. And it's a few things really with boxing. I love boxing now since I was a kid, but that you don't have to love the sport. In fact, you can actively dislike the sport and still get something out of the training for it. So in our programs, it's non-contact, so it's pads, bags. They're not hitting each other, and there's something about there's something about putting a pair of gloves on, hitting something that I think most people relate. There's a kind of cathartic part to that, a release in that, and again, a lot of exercise obviously offers us a release and endorphins, all the rest of it. But there's something about putting a pair of gloves on and hitting something, and it kind of and even the movements in boxing, the way you kind of carry yourself a bit differently after it. And there is obviously a clear link between the physical and the mental, emotional. So it is looking at it for coming at it from different ways. And I think also one of the things I always love, and it always means a lot, in a session yesterday, it was someone who worked for the NHS who's referred people onto a programme came along yesterday, and one of the lads, she says, all the time I've worked with it, it's the first time I've seen him smiling when he's training. It was like an activity in pairs where it's like a tag but with boxing gloves, where you're trying to tag the shoulder and stuff, and you do, so you see people almost immediately again when start smiling. And again, going back to what I'd said about my experience, where I couldn't smile all life, that ability was gone. And so I know how much just that simple thing of seeing people in there smiling, enjoying it, it's massive. And so, and like I said, we all, different things work for different people, but I think what we do is something that bit different, and that does appeal. That does appeal to people, and it's the other thing, it's sense of community as well. The boxing clubs tend to be very supportive environments, a good sense of community. Kind of everyone's equal in the boxing gym. Like we have one of our national champions from the club I'm with in Billingham, who is a personal trainer and a coach, and he takes the boxing part of the session, so people can, we had people in, in the 70s who've never done really any activity, and suddenly they're being trained by or watching train a lad that they've seen on Facebook winning a national championship at the weekend. And there's but everyone's kind of the same in the gym, and and that sense of community, and again with other people that get it, I think that's a very, very powerful aid to helping to improve our mental well-being as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, community is so important, isn't it? The feeling of isolation and loneliness, they say now, can be more detrimental than obesity and smoking, which is just kind of like mind blowing, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
for people to come together to be part of a community and share that common interest and enjoyment as well. And yeah, I personally do love boxing. I've got one of the stand-up boxing. I've forgotten what the name is now. The bags. So it's a stand-up one, which I've had for a few years, and I'm in agreement with you. It's so cathartic. There's just something about, for me, putting the music on really loud. I use like an interval timer app, and I just punch. I used to do classes, so I learned a lot of technique around it, and it's just so brilliant for getting you totally in that space, as we talked at the beginning about mindfulness and being all encompassing the thing that you're doing and present. That's what I really enjoy about it, is just the whole having your head right there and being focused on what you're doing and getting through it. So with the kids then, because you, as you said, have got a sports background and I've got my Nike background, so we know the power of sport. How important is it, in your opinion, that we encourage kids to be active and to be involved in sport?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, for my, I'm someone that grew up, where it's going to sound like a real old man, but you play out with your mates, days like this, you're out all day until you get kicked out and your parents shout you in when it's tea time. It's real olden days stuff, as my kids would say. But I talk about in my program as moving more. It's about moving more, whether it be organised physical activity or not. I think, and with kids as well, I think the whole exploration aspect of it as well. I read a book a good few years ago now. It was very, very powerful about how children's lives now are, it's essentially organised by adults. Even their play opportunities, play dates, they're not. You go to a five-a-side centre rather than kicking about in the park. It's very, very different now, and so they're always kind of supervised by adults. And so there's the physical activity aspect, but there's also that exploration and that the way kids sort things out amongst themselves, take risks, settle conflict, all these things that are important social, interpersonal skills. And the way we have connections. One of the things that as well was a very important thing for me with sport growing up, was having a group of friends that weren't my school friends. Having that separation, and nowadays, it's harder for kids to switch off now. If you have a problem at school, it can kind of follow you a bit, and but the whole, and again, we go through different periods of life where we're more active or less active. But I think when you've had that good experience of sport and physical activity growing up, you're always more likely to pick it back up again, even if it's doing something different. Because you know the benefits of physical activity, and you feel better for having done it. I mean, I still, like I say, I used to run competitively, and I still miss the feeling of a tough 10-miler in my legs. I don't miss having to go out and do it, but that sense, that feeling you'd get afterwards, and I'm not someone that bemoans playing on PlayStations or wherever, because I think I was probably amongst the first generation where that was part of our lives. It wasn't a PlayStation, it was like a Commodore 64 then, but it was always that balance. you would be in the house, you'd be on your computer, but then you'd always be playing out with your mates. You wouldn't want to miss out on that. You know, you had your sports clubs and stuff. And I listen to my son, you know, on FIFA and you know, the games that he plays. The fact that it is social now and with the mates on it, and it's quite funny to listen to actually. But it is that. But they will get together and play out as well, and say they play football together, and so again, it's that balance. It's a balance thing, and in terms of a good, healthy, balanced life, I think movement, physical activity is an important part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on, you know, the whole play aspect, which is so important, isn't it? You know, kids using their imagination, that's how they develop and how they grow and build resilience, which when we're talking about mental health is so important. And you're right, you know, sport teaches so much more than just the physical movement itself.
Oh, yeah.
It's the community, the team building. I
Yeah.
didn't grow up with sport. You know, I used to watch football. Actually, I did like going, I shouldn't mention it, Sunderland was my team, going to Old Roker Park back in the day, but I didn't play sport. And when I then started working at Nike, I saw a real difference in people who had grown up in sport, being active,
Yeah.
you know, from a point of view of like team building skills and leadership and competitiveness, which actually can be quite a healthy thing to have
Oh,
in a
absolutely.
lot of areas and aspects. And I felt like I'd missed out. You know, I was quite envious of people who'd had that experience growing up. And as you say, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, being real sport and part of a team as such. It could just be that you are active and you grow up therefore understanding why you should move your body, which is totally what I'm all about, is, you know, just normalising that. So kids do grow up not ever questioning it because they just think, well, this
Yeah.
is how you live, you move. And
Yeah.
as you say, you don't have to then become an adult who is still part of a team, but you're an adult who just knows that they can walk to the shops
Yeah.
or they can walk to meet someone, or, you know, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think the resilience bit is a huge part of what comes out of, you know, being involved in exercise and sport. If you can in some way, it definitely has a lot of
Yeah.
positives, doesn't it, from that side of
Yeah.
things.
And I think I mean, the obvious ones, you know, learn about winning and losing, and doing that, both of those kind of things with dignity, and you're learning about the relation, the link between, you know, how much effort you put, how much training, how much work you put in to what you get out. You know, the idea that, you know, talent will only get you so far, that sometimes it's not fair. You don't get what you deserve. You know, there's a lot of really important life lessons there. I mean, one of the things I find very interesting at the moment, and that I see a difference when I watch my son's team play. So he plays, he's 11, and one of the things I've noticed, I mean, a lot of kids get upset, you know, when things don't go the way, actually during a game as well as, and that's something that's very different from when I was young. And I wonder, so I was wondering about it because obviously being able to express our emotions is so important. And, you know, when we talk about men in particular, as we started the conversation, where it almost so ingrained in us that we don't do that. I'm very interested to see how the kind of the generations coming through now, you know, how will kind of play out into adulthood, because they do seem. I kind of wonder whether it's a thing of them feel more able to express emotion, or whether they're not being able to manage their emotion as well. I'm still not kind of sure. It's quite interesting because, again, the skills we need to learn, you know, that we need to be able to acknowledge and recognize our emotions, to label them, but also to, again, have healthy ways of managing them. And, you know, this whole like emotional literacy, I mean, you know, to me, we learn about the fact that we have to often learn about these things when we're in a real crisis is not great. We should be taught these things, and, you know, it should just be a normal part of, you know, even if you're looking at purely from a point of view of economic benefit, you know, having a healthy workforce that knows the strengths and, you know, can regulate themselves is I just don't know why we don't better educate people on that. But
Yeah,
I
I
suppose
think, and
that's why I
that's the
do what I
key.
do.
Yeah, the key words regulate, isn't it? Is that there's nothing wrong with feeling the emotion and expressing the emotion,
Oh,
but
no,
it's
absolutely.
having the ability to regulate it. Because in that example, if we normalize it for kids to get upset in the middle of a game, then when they are an adult at work and a meeting isn't going right, does that then play out as they express that emotion right there and then in the midst of it happening? So it's having that balance, isn't it? That,
Yeah,
as you say, it's good and absolutely normal to express emotion, but be able to regulate it and find, the right environment and time to then do that and work through it. And I think with that as well, I mean, we could do a whole podcast episode on this because it's actually, you've brought up a very interesting topic about the way kids are evolving and so on. And I
mm,
think some of it's possibly to do with our culture, how that's evolving, that kids are very much now, like
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
expectation
yeah,
of, and I want that, I need that, I'm
yeah,
entitled to
yeah,
that. And, that shift has come a lot through becoming very sedentary, technology, diet, and
yeah, yeah,
the unhealthy lifestyle that our kids are unfortunately being, brought up with,
yeah, yeah,
which is just, a very unfortunate way that technology's,
yeah,
brought that about, as well as it having obviously many positive things
yeah,
that,
yeah,
yeah. So it is a very interesting one. And my daughter's 15 and she's very inactive, which I probably shouldn't say because I might look like I'm not doing my job properly, but you can't force your kids to do anything. And for
no,
me, it's all about just role modeling to her,
yeah,
because I do believe that even though she doesn't want to do it right now, she's
yeah,
been brought up always seeing me be active and take care of myself and be open emotionally and be very
yeah,
honest as well and so on. And so I just truly believe that when we live like that for us, our kids will learn
yeah,
from it, and
yeah,
there'll be a point
yeah,
when they're ready that they choose to. She's obviously at that difficult teenage age range where when you say go for a walk, it's like the worst thing in the world ever, to have to leave her room and go outside.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm hoping, that penny will drop when she's at the right point in her life, because that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
she's grown up knowing. And so I think we've just got to model that, haven't we? And that, back
yeah,
to where we started with, how do we change culture? How do we normalize it? That's what my big mission and vision is.
yeah,
If we live in the way that is right,
yeah.
that's where change comes for the future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, isn't it? Like when you're saying that, I can kind of relate to that. How, uh, you. I don't know. Maybe I had the naive idea when I had kids that that you'd be this able to influence them this way, but they have their own personality, character from very, very early on. And my daughter will sometimes say to me, I don't know, I'll be talking about something, and I'm like, you know what? And Jill will be like, "Oh, Dad, is this going to be another motivational speech?" I'm like, hey, that's what I do, darling.
That's what I
Yeah,
get is I don't want the
simply
coaching.
unimpressed.
When I start, I'll ask a question, well, how did that make you feel? No, don't go
Yeah,
there. I don't want the
yeah,
coaching. I
exactly.
don't need to.
Yeah, well, that's it as a parent, that, like you say, you hope some of it'll kind of rub off just by being a role model, because, yeah, it certainly doesn't. If trying to do it in a direct way, I think you often get the reverse result.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've really enjoyed our chat. Matthew, it's been great finding out a little bit more and being
Likewise,
able
thank
to
you.
share some of your stories. So if you want to let people know where they can find you, and I know that you've got your books as well. I absolutely love the title of your first book. So
Yes,
yeah, if you share that with everyone, I'll pop it
yes.
into
So
the notes as well.
yeah, so my business, my company is a community interest company called Knockout Depression, and we're at www.knockoutdepression.co.uk, and there's details of our programs that we do for workplaces, communities, our online program. So there's details there. And yeah, my book, Something Changed, Stumbling Through Divorce, Dating and Depression, and that's available on Amazon. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. And as I say, I love the title there as well. Just being really open and honest. And as you said, trying to help others to know that it's absolutely fine to not feel good and to be able to share that is absolutely vital. So, yeah, thanks
Thank you.
again. And I hope everyone's enjoyed the conversation.